Well, hello everyone. What an incredible space this is. This is my first encounter with Screen 3. Some of you, of course, absolutely stalwart members of this screen, let alone the rest of the cinema experience here at the Garden. The space opened up here on the ground floor and the slightly raised ground floor area is an extraordinary thing, of course. We never know quite what to find in London. There are hidden spaces, of course. There are hidden realms just behind doors, down passageways, arcades, into the muse area of certain parts of West London, and so on. But of course, this idea of a recovered and actually a revealed space that was hiding effectively in plain sight, just behind the surface of the everyday, is a perfect introduction, of course, to the films we've just seen and the conversation we're about to have, because that's exactly, of course, what the Quay Brothers revealed to us in every single frame of all their extraordinary works. I was on the bus here, 243. Good service, actually, takes you well up into the northeast of the city when it works. Of course, often diversions on Old Street. But diversions and digressions, of course, are part of this conversation as well, actually, because if we stayed with the mundane everyday, we would never have the films of the Quay Brothers at all. So we actually veer off with pleasure and delight, in fact, into those strange and unforeseen locations. Anyway, back to the bus. On the bus, Blossom exploding, of course, now in the finer weather that we're enjoying after the long winter. Blossom transforming the everyday street in a way that we all surely delight in, brief and passing though it may be. But the nocturnal flowering of the Quay Brothers films, of course, stays with us, not least in the incredible, I'm going to now lean down into the, no I'm not, I'm going to tell you about it remotely because I can't find it in my bag, the two incredible disc sets that BFI have put out, with all respect to them, over the last years. 2003, the first collection only on DVD, then of course, and more recently, the incredible set, now on Blu-ray, of course, with incredible extras and everything else. Now, in the first one, this is the booklet for the first one from the DVD collection. There is an amazing dictionary of the Quay Brothers. Now, in this dictionary, A to Z, of course, by Michael Brook, the producer of the first disc and contributor to the second, with an expanded dictionary. In the dictionary, there are references to people. Now, you know, in another filmmaker's oeuvre, perhaps, these references would be thrown in. There would be a little bit of Foucault to give the dodgy second feature, maybe some heightened status, etc. Bit of Deleuze and Guattari at the end, to remind them, of course, the viewer and themselves that they're absolutely contemporary at the time of writing. I challenge any filmmaker in the world to actually be properly inhabiting the dictionary that is in this A to Z, and in fact to come up with their own that even vaguely reaches the foothills of this epic mountain range of references. Lithuanian historians. Most filmmakers don't even know where Lithuania is, let alone that they have history and historians to record it and relay it to the present. That's how incredible these films are. Anyway, what a pleasure to be here. Thanks to Garden Cinema and the Polish Cultural Institute, particularly Marlena and Christoph, everyone at the Garden, particularly Molly. We've got an incredible film team filming. We'll be recording questions and conversational responses from you. Stephen Timothy, it's a real pleasure to be here. This is the first programme of two. It's also part of a little season that's going on here during Kinoteka, the Polish Film Festival, which has included, of course, the IMAX premiere in the UK of your recent feature, Sanatorium Under the Sign of the Hourglass, and ongoing, sadly not until July, as I think was alerted to you earlier, except in our imagination when it goes on indefinitely until the end of next week, the 4th of April, at the Swedenborg Hall, literally a short stroll from this cinema, as part of Esoteric Avenue, a new city centre district that we're just trying to get past Sadiq at the moment when he pedestrianises Oxford Street. Esoteric Avenue, just up the road, in Swedenborg Hall, incredible show of the Quay Brothers sets, the decor, in fact, of many of these films. Has anyone been yet to the Swedenborg Hall? Thank you very much. Okay, Monday to Friday, 10 till 5, till the 4th of April. Please go. If you like these films and you want to actually effectively be inside them during your waking hours, then please go to Swedenborg Hall, 10 till 5, free, good coffee at the Swedenborg Hall. Stephen Timothy. This is an incredible programme. It's an incredible body of work. We were saying just outside, it's 40 years next year that one of your most famous films, The Street of Crocodiles, was made, 1986. But to take you all the way back to the beginning, and in fact to the space before your animated realm was first created, you were effectively live-action filmmakers, and you had an engagement with the non-marionettish, shall we say, the non-animated, in a way that was perhaps surprising for you to encounter when you decided to move across into this realm, partly through a sort of creative necessity, as I understand it.
Is that a question? That's a
I don't
question.
know. I mean, if my voice went up at the end slightly, then perhaps it is a question. Otherwise, it's just a statement of fact, I think.
Well, at the art school in Philadelphia, we did do some live action filming in 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter. That's the extent, and it was with genuine people, our brother or our older brother, my younger brother.
Animals.
Animals. Yes, but I think we realized that the destiny was to be aiming a lot bit tighter, in the sense that we saw that the tabletop would, 4 foot by 6 foot would be the universe that would be the one that would most afford us complete expression.
Well, also that no one would be looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the most important thing, because
Yeah.
you could fail miserably and no one would know.
Yeah.
And I guess crucially, of course, you didn't have a wider crew. You didn't have to clock off at 5 o'clock and all those sort of things, right? I mean, in Philadelphia, growing up, we now associate you kind of, indivisibly with, a Polish and Central and Eastern European kind of cosmology of makers and influences. But for many of us, the people that you've referred to and adapted from and inhabited the works of, we came to primarily, many of us, I think, through your work. So how did you, back in the day, find this space, and when did it start to become a kind of an actual sort of map, a territory for you?
Well, when we were at the art school in Philadelphia, and we're talking a long time ago, 1960, 65, 66, 67, there was a cinema house outside of Philly in Germantown called the Bandbox. And there you could literally see the French New Wave, the Czech New Wave, Antonioni, Kurosawa. This guy, the one who ran the cinema, it was 2 films a night, all the Bergman films. And so we would just jump on the 23 tram and go out to Germantown. And that was...
It's also where we discovered that David Lynch was going to the same cinema. We may have sat in the same cinema on the same night with him.
He was at the art school. We were at the Philadelphia College of Art, and he was at the University of Pennsylvania Art School, which was like 5 blocks up. Exactly same time.
Amazing. 23, the tram, of course, there, important transport reference, which I knew was coming up and therefore factored in earlier. 23, of course, it had to be the 23 tram for those of you who are numerologically inclined. Also incredibly close to the 243 as well, not just in the transport sense. Thank you both very much. But what about the literature? Because the literature, again, for example, I mentioned earlier this idea of coming to work through your films. For me, Robert Walser, I came to through Institute Benjamenta. When did the literature come in? Was there a circulation of translated work at this point, or was that more when you came to the UK?
No, it was pretty available in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not so impoverished as everybody thinks they are. All the Walser, they were all translated.
But when we were before we went to London, we didn't know of Walser, but we read about Kafka existed only because when we went up to the librarian and said to him, "What does Kafkaesque mean?" He said, "Look it up in the dictionary." We looked it up in the dictionary; it didn't exist. And then 2 days later, we go back and under K, there's Kafka, and that was his diaries. So that's what fueled us, were the diaries, not the castle or the novels. The novels.
So you came to the UK, to London, to the Royal College in 67, I think.
69.
69.
69 to 72.
And you found a receptive space, a kind of welcoming, kind of creative environment?
Oh, it's just a chance to carry on the exploration. That's all. I mean, otherwise we're up for the draft in Vietnam.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? So it's animation or draft, basically.
Exactly. You didn't have an option.
I mean, given the way the world's going, you might want to remember that tip, of course, the younger members of the audience, when Keir Starmer's War Machine calls you up to go and attack Denmark. Animation, yeah, manipulated moving image, as the late great Dick Arnold called it, because in a way, the manipulated moving image, this is not the space to argue about terminology, but you are doing more than animate in the conventional sense. You are inhabiting material, transforming matter in an alchemical sense, but way beyond what animation is widely understood to mean. What is your sense of what the priority engine is in the work that you're making? I don't mean narratively, etc., but I mean, how do you consider the process and technique that you undertake?
Well, that should be a secret.
No, don't reveal it. I just say, how do you think about the secret?
Yeah. No, I think you have to realize that that when you're in the studio, that it's a laboratory. So it's there. It's a process of discovery, invention, and
and there's not 30 people behind you. I mean, say in Hollywood, you'd be stuck with a whole crew, and and if one of those members of the crew said to the director, "I have this great idea," he'd say, "No, we don't need ideas. It's done. It's sealed. Make the film." But at this point, we can stop at any moment and just digress or create something.
Absolutely, and I don't want you to reveal those secret techniques, but when you make a work over these many incredible films that you have, and when you're responding to a source text or the body of work of a writer or other maker, have you identified now a kind of a pattern to how the seed of the work will emerge? Does it emerge out of an image, out of a line, perhaps from a text if it is that? Do you have something that is kind of relayed from the previous film that maybe sets the scene for the new work, or something like that? Is there a pattern to how you identify the way forward?
I think it's something that's very much, it could be a piece of music, a piece of literature, it could be an image from a painting or whatever. It's all a kind of floating world which you're very much quick to elaborate. So one thing kicks off very quickly another associative image. So I don't think it's highly intuitive. We're not. No way are we analytical about it. It's just going for a lot of source imagery and then building very slowly on it.
Well, I mean, let's take one film from the programme we've just seen, In Absentia, where there is an explicit collaborative partnership set up for you with Rodney Wilson, then at the BBC, a commission around music and film. In Absentia, of course, made with the extraordinary music of Stockhausen. How did that, when there was a kind of invitation to collaborate, and a composer was in the mix, how did that partnership develop?
Well, I remember Rodney telling us that the BBC had asked 10 film directors would they like to do Stockhausen, and they all said no. And somehow he looked upon us as the 11th, maybe, I don't know. But we said we jumped, because even when we were at the Philadelphia College of Art, we were doing false record covers for Stockhausen. We had his
They had a hunch.
Yeah, already. But the pianists, they were twin brothers, right?
I think they were. Yeah.
Kontowski brothers, and so that's the first album we bought. We hardly played it, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing. I mean, as we've established earlier in this conversation, of course, those previous 10 filmmakers not only didn't want to work with Stockhausen, they didn't know who he was, right? And
Probably
so therefore, they had to say no, because had they said yes, they would have been instantly exposed, which was your favourite piece, right? And I think it's important to say also that buying records and books is the most important part of that process. Reading them is a secondary process often, right? Because we feel, as we do now that we've seen your films, we feel inhabited by them just by the fact of them being on the shelves. I speak only for myself here, but I think that's an interesting idea that all these kind of things are sewn into the fabric of our lives, and then in this case, of course, there's an incredible surfacing of that. So with the Stockhausen, how did the two of you work with Stockhausen to actually generate that response? Had he provided the music in advance?
No. It took a long while. He said. First, we had to send a kind of a show reel to him, and then we apparently got a very we got the approval, green light, and then he said, this was I think in January, and then he said, you will receive on August 12th at 12 noon the following composition. And it's exactly what happened. At 12 noon on the August 12th, this package arrived, and it was the music that he wrote for the BBC. So first thing we did was we put it on. We had it transferred to 35 millimeter tape, and we put it on the Steamback, and then we started playing it, and we just looked at each other and said, "I think we can only do about 5 seconds a day," because it was so formidable. You know, it's just this wall of sound, cosmic sound, in a way. So, but at that time we were already we sort of had a hunch where he was going to be going, knowing some of his other work. So we were doing some explorations with. We built a few decors and we're filming things, and then and then when we received the music, he then said he gave us a couple of months, and then Rodney Wilson from the BBC said, "Okay, we have to show him a little bit of what you've done already." So we arranged a screening in a Soho screening house, and we showed like the first 10 minutes or something. And then afterwards he looked at us and he said, "Just be really fantastic if we just had a little bit of blue." That was his only comment. So
blue goes in, a little bit of blue, a little hint of blue,
yes.
One of the Pantone blues, and then did he see the final finished work?
Yeah.
Well, he had a huge screening. He invited us and the BBC to Cologne, and the cinema was filled with all his students. And there was a vast amount of students, and Steve and I sat at the back ready to flee. And the BBC. So when the film was projected, at the very end, the BBC were literally there, aimed at Stockhausen with his two wives, seated on either side of him. And immediately, because we were at the back, there was this commotion, and one of the wives got up and said, like, "No, stop! Don't film." And BBC stopped, and he said he had to collect himself, and he thought that we knew telepathically that his mother had been gassed by the Nazis for being feeble-minded madness. And we said, of course, we had no idea of that. And but he collected himself, and then the BBC turned on the cameras. And only the other night, we just got the tape. So we haven't seen it in I don't know, 30 years, with this interview with Stockhausen.
I mean, that's an incredible story. I didn't know that either. I was delighted to be part of the relevant award strand for the British Animation Awards back in the day at the BFI South Bank that gave the film to Best Film Award to In Absentia. I have to say I feel now a little bit guilty about how I worked with the rest of the jury on that, because it seemed to me the only film that could be awarded. And there were, earlier conversations about other titles. I was a bit forceful, I feel now. I'd just like to get that out in public. If any other jury members who have grown old with me remember that moment. Incredible to see it the first time I did see it. An incredible film about how scale and the perception of scale can be challenged and altered, and can be worked with in our imagination when the film, such as it is of such quality. How do you think about scale? You mentioned earlier the idea of the tabletop of in a way reducing things so that it can't be seen by others in the making, and also to control a sense of budget and scale in a practical sense. But what is your sense of scale when you're working with this material? And people who have seen the sets will know what I mean in a practical sense, but I also mean in a slightly larger sense about the idea of scale.
Well, I think the context is that you have to, when Rodney Wilson asked us for, after that we accepted the commission, he said, "Okay, now you have to give us a little scenario." And we'd seen at the Hayward Gallery, it was called an exhibition called Beyond Reason, which was on the collection of Prinzhorn, which was of how do you call it, Art Brut, or the image, the drawings of the mad. And there was one selection of drawings by this woman, Emma Hauk. There was about 4 or 5 pictures. In it, she writes this endless, you see it in the film, just writes over darling come. And the husband never came.
Or he never got them.
Or he never got them, yes. So in a way, we intuited correctly that they went into the bottom of the clock and just amassed there. I guess the sense of scale for us is that really it's that that you're there to explode it. You're there to say that between the macrocosm and the microcosm, there's a massive confusion of what scale really represents. So I think it was for us was very, very important to get in very, very, very close on the quality of the her repetitions, the repeatedness of the.
It was one eye plunged into a telescope and the other eye into a microscope. But the other thing was that Leonora Carrington said that. But I know when we decided to project it in scope, that was also something that heretofore we were doing 133 to 166, but suddenly scope took it out of its comfort zone, I think.
No, I mean, obviously the Carrington idea is a wonderful one. And also one thinks of the Ray and Charles Eames film, The Power of 10, where a person is lying having a picnic, I think, on the park surface in Chicago, and the camera pulls out at factors of 10 each time into the far distant cosmos,
that's right, yes.
And then back into the body.
Yes,
and of course the two extremities are the same.
Yeah.
Effectively, which is a great idea, and of course you inhabit that in a single space. Let's think about Bruno Schulz a little bit, because obviously we saw The Street of Crocodiles, and that was your first filmic exploration of this incredible body of work, which you sort of, I wouldn't say you've made your own, but you certainly have kind of claimed an absolutely unarguable involvement within. How did you come across Schulz in the first instance? And obviously it seems tailor-made for your imagination, but how was that first encounter?
Me? We were visiting Poland in 1974, our first time there, and our friend who invited us, Andrzej Klimowski, the poster maker, and he was studying poster design at that point, and he said, "Come on over." So we visited, and then he said, well, we were introduced to a lot of Polish writers. One of them was Bruno Schulz, and he said, I think you'll admire him. I don't think, we had to then go back and find that there was an existing translation of all of the 2 volumes of Bruno Schulz. That's all there exists, 2 volumes of his stories. And
well, it was Penguin.
And even,
amazingly.
But when we approached the BFI to do a film in 1984, 85, they said, because we had already done a film in 1979 with the BFI, and they pointed out our huge lack of narrative. And we said, so they said, it'd be nice if you based it on an author of some reputation. So we said Bruno Schulz, and then they said, fantastic. And then we smiled to ourselves, saying, nobody has less narrative than Bruno Schulz. But they gave us the green light, so that was mercifully good.
No, absolutely. I mean, Bruno Schulz now kind of given in a way that was, sort of unimaginable, perhaps even in the 70s when that collection came out. And obviously that identity of the world making that he's so amazing at has stayed with you and obviously led you towards the recent feature. Is Schulz's kind of imagination a sort of a constant sort of measure for you when you come across new texts? Because it seems such a perfect space for your your incredible imagination to occupy. And in a way, I'm not saying that many people would have seen other work without seeing your Street of Crocodiles, but in a way, that film serves as a kind of measure of the possible when you come across other texts.
I mean, when we first read the treatise on mannequins dummies in the first volume, he talks about the ascension of the everyday. He talks about the metaphysics of matter, that matter is never dead, that it's constantly in fermentation and migration. And we both said, there it is. It's what animation can do beautifully, and not so much live action. But animation it seemed a gift to us. So we just buried our heads.
Buried our heads. And your heads, of course, are widely raised and absolutely awake and open. And this is your moment, of course. Incredible scenes here with the Quay Brothers. What a opportunity to think out loud with them about their amazing work. Can I just get a show of hands about who is with us again for part 2 in about 45 minutes? Yep, a kind of a great number. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll obviously have some fresh questions for the introduction at the beginning of program 2. Whole new take on the Quay Brothers that we'll find in the interval. But please, let's hear any thoughts from you about the films you've just seen, about other works by the Quays that you've seen elsewhere, about the exhibition, about the feature, the other features. Any thoughts? We have obviously Roving Mike, one of the hardest working people in cinema, is with us, ready to rove. Would anyone like to kick off with thoughts about the films you've just seen? Yes, please. Thank you at the front, and then we'll go up to the back. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about, so In Absentia won the award in Dresden, year after for animated, for the light. I'm not going to say what it is. And I think it would be really interesting for people to know what you told me, because no one would have thought it. The way that light developed, the thing that you encountered in your studio through the window.
Oh, the light, yes, of course. Because in Absentia, we decided to open the blinds of the windows and let real sunlight come in. And we set up a whole set of mirrors that from the morning when, I was at that point living in the studio. Stephen would come in a bit later, and I'd tear apart the mattress, and we had these little balsa wood things saying, this is where this mirror goes, this is where this mirror goes. And as the sun rose through the windows, it would hit them and then bounce onto the set. And that's when we decided we were totally open to this flagrant form of lighting. And so that...
Well, there's also the we had an east window, and then we had 2 other flanking windows. So the sun made a journey coming up early. So at 4 a.m, we put the camera. We were shooting in 35. We put it on time lapse. So we put it on at like every 7 seconds, and you could almost fall asleep. You just go back to bed. Camera just turned over as the light made this journey from the east and then slowly along the windows. And when the Russians came back, I remember on the first day, there was this jittery electric quality to the imagery, and we thought, my God, it's a disaster. This is a joke. Then we suddenly realized, of course, it's about, it was the clouds scud, going the English weather, never consistent, just obliterating the sun like that and creating this like dipping of light, and it was, in a way, it was so organic. At the same time, you thought it was a dreadful mistake, but then we sort of said, when we laid it up against the music, we just said, there it is. It's electric. It's total, the cosmic sense of Stockhausen's music against this quality of light. So then we were quite fearless. We just didn't give a damn about that it was going to be consistent. Sometimes it would just be a cloudy day, and you would just, But we had basically 2 major sets up in the room. One was a giant wall, which is what you see at the beginning with the little window. And then we had a miniature set on the table. So all these mirrors that Timothy was talking about, basically were aligned that they'd hit certain positions but we had a very, very tiny room, half the size of this. So it was...
and also when we couldn't get the actress on board, it was one of us dressing up in her costume.
Yes.
Doing the writing.
Yes, so it was his fingers a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were better.
Better Fingers.
Better
She couldn't do it.
Surprisingly.
Volume 2 of your memoirs, I think, Better Fingers. The Wilderness Years. Let's hear from... Could we please? Yeah, thank you very much. Oh, no, sorry, that woman just in front there. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, hello. Yes, it's really wonderful to be here. Your films have really influenced me from my early teens up until now. So I want to thank you for the universe you've created. And I don't want to ask, I kind of cringe because it may sound like a very cliche question, so I really apologize in advance. But may I just ask, the fact that you are twins, do you feel that... my impression is that has allowed you to cocoon in your own the universe that you've created, and not have to that others will come on board because it's something that you, having worked with various twins in my own career in music and performance, I'm just curious of that. If you don't mind me asking, I know it's very cliche, so I apologize, but do you find that you've been able to just glide in a way and with a fully formed sort of way of working?
No, I think that, that the like when we said earlier about the animation being a laboratory, it's only for the two of us. I mean, you don't share that. It's because it's so intuitive between the two of us. When we've done the 2 feature films, or the third, we've done 3 now, that, when you bring on a crew, you do a mental shift, and you say, we do need collaboration here, and then you go after a production designer or well, we've always worked with musicians, but you the costume designer, you sit and talk with them, and it's you're asking for a deep collaboration like that. Otherwise, we're more than happy just to be the two of us and nobody else around. It's better that way. And we don't have to talk a lot.
We don't have to share the wine.
Thank you very much for both questions. The first question was from Suzanne Buchan, who is the author of an incredible monograph on the Quays that you can find in all the ways you know how online. Suzanne Buchan, that is. Thank you very much indeed for that question as well. There was a question behind you, I think. Is there the back row? Did someone have their hand up when I went to this question? No? Anyone? Any other thoughts at this point in proceedings about the films or the work you've seen elsewhere? Yes, please. Should we hold on? There's someone at the back. Are you just straight? Yes, please. Yeah, and then we'll come back to you, Suzanne. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a wonderful friend who does who writes a PhD about your works, and I got introduced to this wonderful world from her. And I study cinema myself, but I also like theater. And your work actually inspires me to explore puppet theater. And there's a very nice one in Tbilisi, and also I know in Prague, in Petersburg. So could you share a bit of your reflections about the expressive possibilities between puppet theater and animation? Yes.
Well, I know that we've done a lot of theater and opera, but I don't think we make that division between that it's puppet theater. It's both are completely, for us, different disciplines. But the nice thing about the first time we were asked to do something for the theater was the Love for Three Oranges by Prokofiev, and the director said to us, invited us to design, and we said, no, that's beyond our capabilities. And he said, he said, just pretend it's a puppet film. I'll do the rest. So basically, all we did is we had to work to 1:24 scale, which is, you know, a way of scaling up for the final version of of how the decors are going to be built. But we built the models like we build our own puppet sets, although when we build our puppets, I think our scale is more towards, not that we measure it, but it's probably 1 to 10, 1 to 12. Because I think the thing about working with puppets is that if our puppets are like that size, what you do is that you can stay at the table and you animate it. But if they get too big, you have to step back to sort of judge the frame or the positioning like that. So I think for us, it's most comfortable to work like the puppets are 10, 12 inches tall. That's scale, okay?
Thank you. And after seeing the exhibition, Swindon House, I was curious, how does this little figures move? Is there invisible line that draws them, or some?
Well, most of them have armatures, so they're aluminium ball and socket armatures. So they hold their position. So it's very nice if it's well made. If it's well made, they usually are. You can, one little movement. Every puppeteer knows that, but it's just, that's what it is. It's just patience and making tiny, almost invisible movements sometimes. And
That's really incredible.
yeah, so.
Thank you very much, Steve. Suzanne, would you like to echo that?
All I was going to say is, over the years of programming your works, there's always at least 5 or 6 people that stand at the end. They couldn't ask a question because they're not ready yet. When you see this work for the first time, it's really hard to ask a question. I'm just saying that, so don't be shy. There's no stupid questions here. They're all wonderful, yeah?
Thank you very much indeed, Suzanne. Great point there. Of course, some of you are coming back in the second half, as it were, Programme 2. Others of you will find your way into the refreshment area, and so if you'd like to approach the brothers at that point, then do take Suzanne's lead and ask those questions. And we do have a couple more minutes in here formally until we go out there. So last calls now for any questions. Over here, please. Yes, thank you.
You said on the features that you're kind of forced to collaborate. Do you have a wants list? Is there people that you want to be with? Does it stop you from compromising?
Do we have a list?
People that you want to work with?
Well, I think it depends if we were shooting the film here in England. Yes, we sort of keep an eye on for instance, the costume designers that we worked with, for instance, with Richard Jones, when we did a lot of the theater work and opera work. We learned everything there about, that. But for instance, when we shot the last film we shot in Poland, we were out of our depth. We didn't know, we had to go by, we we did know certain production design, but in terms of actors and actresses, we had to work with a casting agent. So you're at the mercy, because it's a co-production. So we were involved. We had to do the shoot, work with a Polish team.
But the most important thing is the cameraman for us. We have to have that person on board. And the one that, say, for instance, Institute Beniamenta, we discovered him because he'd done a number of films on choreographers. And we thought we wanted a balletic, more the use of the camera to be, in that sense, a moving camera. And so when we sat down and talked with him, you could tell that he was on board instantly. And I remember on the one occasion, there were 3 cameramen that had to be interviewed. The third one was one of Hitchcock's cameramen who did, I think it was Frenzy. And his wife became was the continuity girl, and
Beniamenta.
In Beniamenta. But anyway, we chose Nick Nolan in the end because of his choreographic capabilities. And then she came up to us at the end and said, "You made the right choice. You didn't choose my husband." Because he said, the first thing we said, "Are you willing to frame elsewhere than the face?" And he said, "No, the money is where the face is. That's where you frame, where you aim the camera." And we thought, totally wrong.
Interesting, the role, of course, of the spouse in this conversation. I mean, they're a very loyal and supportive wife. Thinking about Stockhausen's, both his wives, in fact, I wonder what they would have thought about certain commissions. You know, was he the right choice for that Blue Peter expanded edition? I don't think so, possibly. We've got lots more to talk about, which we will do in what's called an extended introduction in programme 2. Now, Christoph mentioned the lovely day, the light outside, but we have a different quality of light in here for you, a kind of extraordinary nocturnal light, the light of an inner space as much as it is an outer space. Now, if that's true, I don't know, as you would see it, but inner space and outer space are, in a way, the baton relay that we take forward from the Q&A, Stephen and Timothy. You were talking previously about the idea of scale, the microcosmic and the macrocosmic, and in that space, between those two kind of spectrum ends, your work operates. So I'd like, without giving away too much of the films that we're coming towards now, because of course we'd seen the programme when we had the earlier conversation, we're now into another programme, and you've curated both these programmes. When you're gathering work together, and obviously in the process of making this work over many decades now, do you find interesting strands and connections and continuities between work? I don't mean simply that you've made, several films from the work of Bruno Schulz, but how do you think about the families of films that you've made and how they sit together?
Well, I think that the thing that most confronts us is when we're asked to do something like this for these two programs, is that you have basically your life. Well, no, but your life is that it's just a consecutive days, years, one after the other. Then you're asked to present a program, and you suddenly realize that some films are things that we've self-generated and tried to get. That we've gone to the BFI or Channel 4 or BBC might have asked to do something and then rejected it, and then so it's a feeling of that there's a lot of strands of a mixture of commissions, and like for instance Maska, the Stanisław Lem project was from the Polish Cultural Institute for a season that was meant to be for a Lem journey around all of England. Never happened. The film is all that remained of it, basically. So it's this element of where you're constantly mixing up between things that we're generating, things that are being commissioned, and that you find the space to elaborate on. Right?
Absolutely. I couldn't have put it better myself. No, precisely. No, so there's a relationship between these films. Of course, they're all imbued and underpinned by your own extraordinary artistry. And crucially, we haven't spoken about this earlier either. They are made, at least until very recently, they've been made on film. And film, the medium of film, of course, is absolutely central in a way to how we think about, what's inside these works, imbuing them again with this kind of lived experience. The matter is transformed, the objects and artifacts that you find and employ kind of find their medium sort of partner in film. What is your sense now of this, often necessary shift to the digital, because for all the reasons we know, but how do you understand that relationship, in the majority of your work, to film and what it does to the characters that you animate?
We started from the very first with 8mm. We went to 16, eventually to 35, and then of course it ends up you go to digital because there are no budgets, and so this is something we've accepted. And with the last 35mm film we did, it was delivering the rushes.
Let's explain who.
Yeah, well, we don't have to. But Christopher Nolan commissioned a 35mm film, and we load the film into the camera, which is the last time you touch it, or no, when you remove it, you send it off to the labs out near Heathrow, and then it comes back as digital files. And so where previously with say all the 35mm films, including say In Absentia, we were hanging up these things of film
and editing on the Steenbeck,
doing the montage on a Steenbeck, and of course the Steenbeck we got rid of ages ago only because no one would take it. Film schools wouldn't take it. We destroyed it ourselves and put it in the trash. That's what became of a Steenbeck.
I mean, now if you were asking a young person who wasn't aware of cinema, Steenbeck would be obviously a fashion label, possibly coming out of out of somewhere near Stuttgart, and Hamburg, of course. Hamburg, silly of me, yeah, silly of me. But Steenbeck, of course, the Steenbeck table. I mean, literally, you mentioned earlier the idea of the tabletop making, the kind of cosmology of the tabletop, the size of the decor that you make, and the ability to make small enough creatures, puppets, marionettes that you can actually get in close to them rather than have to step back to see their world and to adjust it. The idea of that manual cutting, I mean, of course, digital also means manual. It's to do with the hand, right? But it's a complete fundamental shift from the manual idea of making. Do you think, through the necessity that you mentioned, a sense of how you engage with the material that you use has changed?
No, because as we were saying that we still approach the animation with a completely analog sensibility, that you physically make the sets with your hands, you physically make the puppets, you animate with your hands, and that's something that there's a stage where once the animation is completed, we immediately download it. How do you say it? Right away you say the shot is good. Does it need a retake, or do we push on like that? But at the same time, there's this very slow that we assemble the film as we shoot it, and also we have the music first, and so right away you're making sure that everything is, more or less beginning to come together. But it's we don't. In other words, we don't leave the editing till 6 months later, and then laying sound. We're laying sound and music absolutely as we go along. So it all grows organically, higgly-piggly. Yeah.
No, exactly. I mean, just thinking about this idea of kind of definitions, because, we talked about film and the digital, and in the earlier conversation there was a question about your relationship to puppet theatre. But it seems to me, and obviously this is partly informed by the fact that we have a wonderful exhibition of your decor in Swedenborg House, as Christoph mentioned, that the works you make are not only films, they are installations, if you like, in an expanded sense, they are artworks in a more classical sense. You've worked in opera and theatre, therefore you become set designers. You become the mise en scène expands outside of the film frame into the world. I mean, in a way I know the answer to this, perhaps, maybe I don't. But do you consider that you're making films, or do you think of them as something else? Do you think of them as works with the possibility of classifications by others being added to that central idea?
No, I think that working in theatre develops a completely different language. So, but you're also second guessing a director, and a director will very specifically have certain ideas about decors. But in theatre, you're pretty much, if you're lucky, you get 3 scene changes. So that means 3 different decors, if you're lucky. Maybe usually it's just one working decor. So in a sense, with animation, we have that versatility of saying, it's not happening in real time. In other words, the set isn't, Act 2 is descending from the ceiling, from the wings, and all in flux instantly. With animation, you can stop for 2 weeks, build another whole set. And you also, you're building for your close-ups, your medium shots, and your long shots. So it's you have a whole archive with cinema's much more fun in a way.
No, absolutely. Cinema is more fun. You heard it here, if not first, then you heard it here absolutely resoundingly underscored here at the Garden Cinema. We're coming to the end of this extended introduction, but it's not over yet, folks, because we will set the scene for you for the films that are coming up without giving away key elements of a fast-changing narrative, of course, in most of them. Lots of plot-heavy action in this part of the Quay Brothers programme. But we are showing, and in a way, Stephen Timothy, just pick up any thoughts you might have about how these films can be set up for the audience. We've got the ident, of course, the Kinoteka ident. We have the calligrapher, this unnameable little broom, unmistaken hands, and the comb. About which, I should say, if you go online, you want to read further about the Quay Brothers' work and the important critical responses to this body of filmic practice, then Jonathan Romney's name will pop up a lot. Jonathan Romney, one of our finest critics, has been with us for many decades, continues to file dispatches from the front line of moving image across the world. He's been one of the most stalwart critical defenders and advocates of the Quay Brothers' work over the years, and he in fact wrote an extended essay on The Comb, the closing film in this programme, which delves deep into its hidden layers, shall we say, and you can read that afterwards online in the ways you know how. But anything you would like to set up for the audience in advance of this screening pleasure that they're about to experience?
I can't. I mean,
we never invite that generosity.
There you are, the selfishness of the Quay Brothers revealed nakedly and blatantly for the first time. Say nothing and keep quiet, basically. Keep moving is the idea, I think. Keep moving those animated figures in the ways that only they know how, because without them we would be imaginatively bereft. You might know the phrase, of course, are you living the dream? People say, are you living the dream? And you say, yes, I'm living the dream, as it rains again in Romford on Monday afternoon. But now we are living the dream. This is what it means to live the dream, is to watch a Quay Brothers film, and then you are living the dream. You're inside the dream, and you can see how the dream is made and where it's inhabited. If you go to Swedenborg House, I keep pushing this, but there's a reason why I push it, because of course it is over on Friday the 4th of April. Please go to Swedenborg House between 10 and 5, Monday to Friday, and encounter the actual sets that make this imaginative universe possible. Of course, down to Stephen and Timothy's amazing dexterity with the imaginative possibility of material itself. Absolutely. Actual matter. So please find that we always that. And if you also have, this is an important point, if you also have a suitable large space with esoteric associations that is not being used for the foreseeable and arguably the indefinite future, we would like to rehouse, after the closure of the exhibition, the 23 sets. Notice 23. Those of you who were here earlier will know that the Quay Brothers took the tram 23 to an incredible cinema in Philadelphia, where they saw a lot of their influential early work. 23 is an important number, of course, for the numerologists who are still with us in the audience from the earlier session. And welcome to all new numerologists, shall we say. You're always welcome, in a way that Phone Deal offers are not, of course. Welcome to anybody at this point. Back to the Swedenborg Hall. We need a major esoteric hall where these sets can be displayed, these decor can be displayed indefinitely. If you know of one or have access to one, please let us know. You can find us through the Garden Cinema. Don't find me. I mean, I'd like to know, and I would certainly want to attend. But please find the Quay Brothers through the Garden Cinema in all the ways you know how. Become a member and supporter of the Garden Cinema if you're not already. They've now got a third option, the Screen 3 option that we're currently experiencing. Incredible, one of the greatest cinemas in the city, the greatest cinema in the city now, one of the greatest cinemas in the history of cinema going in London. That's it. It's as simple as that. Thanks to everyone at the Garden Cinema for making this screening possible, to Kinoteka for supporting the Quay Brothers in this expanded series of encounters with their work. Thank you very much indeed for coming to 1 and 2. And please do now thank, before you enjoy the programme, the Quay Brothers. Thank you very much.